Before God elevates you, He trains your heart through these hidden tests. There comes a moment in your walk with God when everything feels quiet, hidden, almost forgotten. You are still praying. You are still believing. You are still trying to obey. Yet doors seem closed, answers feel delayed, and your heart wonders why God has not moved you forward yet. But what if this season is not rejection? What if it is preparation? Before God ever places His hand of power upon a life, He first places His hand of discipline upon the heart. Before He uses someone publicly, He reshapes them privately. This is the part no one celebrates, the part rarely preached, the part where God teaches you not how to do more, but how to say no. No to voices that sound right, but pull you off course. No to desires that feel urgent, but are spiritually dangerous. No to temptations that promise shortcuts, but steal destiny. God is not impressed by how fast you can move. He is concerned with how deeply you can obey. And often, the greatest proof that God is preparing to use you is not open doors, visible success, or public recognition. It is the quiet battles happening inside you. Battles where no one is watching. Battles where your character is being tested more than your gifts. Battles where obedience costs you comfort, approval, and sometimes even relationships. If God is calling you, He will confront you. If He is shaping you, He will challenge you. And if He plans to use you, He will teach you the sacred power of saying no before He ever entrusts you with the authority to say yes. This message is not meant to condemn you. It is meant to awaken you. Because the temptations you are facing right now may not be random at all. They may be the very signs that God is preparing you for something greater than you imagined. Number 1. The temptation to please people instead of God. One of the very first temptations God teaches you to confront is the need to be approved by people. It is subtle, persuasive, and often disguised as kindness, loyalty, or humility. You tell yourself you are just trying to keep the peace, not hurt anyone, not disappoint those who matter to you. But beneath that desire is a dangerous shift where the voice of people slowly becomes louder than the voice of God. When God begins preparing you for His purposes, He will often lead you into moments where obedience costs you acceptance. You will feel the tension between doing what is right and doing what is popular. Saying yes to people may feel easier, safer, and less painful in the moment. But every time you choose approval over obedience, you quietly delay what God is trying to build in you. People will not always understand the path God gives you. Some will question your decisions. Others may misunderstand your silence, your boundaries, or your refusal to join what everyone else accepts. And this is where the test becomes real, because if your peace depends on being liked, controlled by expectations, or affirmed by applause, you will struggle to walk in God's will when it leads you in the opposite direction. God never called you to be ruled by opinions. He called you to be led by truth, and truth does not change to keep people comfortable. When God teaches you to say no to people-pleasing, He is not making you cold or unloving. He is teaching you alignment. Love that compromises obedience is not love that honors God. Real love speaks truth even when it costs you relationships, comfort, or reputation. There will be moments when obedience feels lonely, when standing with God means standing alone. But those moments are sacred, because the strength to say no to people today is the same strength God will use to trust you with influence tomorrow. If you cannot stand firm in private pressure, you will not stand firm in public calling. God knows that before He can use your voice, your hands, or your influence, He must free your heart from the fear of rejection. And when you finally learn to say, "I will follow God even if others walk away," something powerful happens. You stop living for approval and you start walking in authority. Number 2, the temptation to rush God's timing. Another temptation God must teach you to say no to is the urge to move faster than His timing. This temptation feels justified because you are ready. You have prayed, You have waited. You have prepared yourself as best as you know how. And yet nothing seems to change. Doors remain closed. Progress feels slow. Silence stretches longer than you expected. In that space, impatience begins to speak. Rushing God often sounds spiritual on the surface. You convince yourself that taking control is faith, that pushing forward proves trust, that forcing a door open shows determination. But true faith does not run ahead of God. It walks with Him. When God delays, it is not because He is careless with your future. It is because He is careful with your soul. God understands something we often forget. Timing protects purpose. A calling entered too early can crush the one who carries it. Influence without maturity becomes pride. Visibility without depth becomes vulnerability. God refuses to place you in rooms you are not ready to survive spiritually. So He waits, and in that waiting He watches to see whether you will trust His clock or follow your anxiety. There will be moments when you see others move ahead, while you remain still. Comparison will whisper that you are behind, overlooked, or forgotten. But God's work in you is not measured by speed. It is measured by surrender. What feels like delay is often God strengthening your character, sharpening your discernment, and deepening your dependence on Him. When you rush, you may arrive early, but you arrive empty. When you wait on God, you arrive prepared. Saying no to impatience is saying yes to wisdom. It is choosing obedience over urgency. It is believing that God knows not only where you are going, but when you are ready to arrive. God is not late. He is precise. And when you finally learn to rest in His timing, you stop striving to control outcomes and start trusting the One who holds them. That trust is not weakness. It is spiritual maturity. And it is essential before God entrusts you with greater responsibility. Number 3, the temptation to compromise. Small things. One of the most dangerous temptations God teaches you to resist is the belief that small compromises do not matter. This temptation rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers. It minimizes. It tells you that this one choice is insignificant, that this moment is private, that no one will ever know. And that is exactly why it is so powerful. God prepares His servants in the hidden places long before He ever reveals them publicly. He watches how you respond when obedience feels inconvenient, when integrity costs you comfort, and when doing the right thing brings no immediate reward. The small decisions you make when no one is watching shape the spiritual authority you will carry when everyone is watching. Compromise often begins with justification. You tell yourself that God understands, that circumstances forced your hand, that you will make it right later. But delayed obedience is still disobedience. Partial obedience is still compromise. And God, who sees the heart, is far more concerned with who you are becoming than what you are achieving. The enemy does not need to pull you far off course, only slightly. A small bend in direction over time leads to a completely different destination. That is why God is firm about the little things, not because He is harsh, but because He is protective. He knows that what you tolerate privately will eventually weaken you publicly. When God teaches you to say no to small compromises, He is building something sacred in you, trustworthiness. He is teaching you to honor Him when obedience feels unseen and unrewarded. This kind of faithfulness forms a foundation that storms cannot shake and success cannot corrupt. There will be moments when compromise seems easier than obedience. So when doing what is right feels costly, lonely, or unnecessary. But those moments are invitations to choose God over convenience, truth over shortcuts, integrity over applause. Before God uses you in powerful ways, He must know that your obedience is not situational, that you will honor Him not only in public victories but in private struggles. When you learn to say no to small compromises, you prove that your heart can be trusted with greater things, and that trust is something God never takes lightly. Number 4, the temptation to let your past define you. One of the deepest temptations God teaches you to overcome is the voice that tells you your past disqualifies you. This temptation does not come as rebellion, it comes as shame. It reminds you of who you used to be, what you failed at, and the moments you wish you could erase. And if you listen long enough, it convinces you that God may forgive you, but He will never fully use you. Shame is one of the enemy's most effective tools because it keeps you looking backward while God is calling you forward. It traps you in old identities long after God has offered you a new one. You begin to believe that your calling belongs to someone cleaner, stronger, and more consistent than you. But God has never chosen people because of their perfection. He chooses people because of their surrender. When God prepares you for His purpose, He will confront the lies you believe about yourself. He will not allow you to hide behind regret or self-condemnation. The past may explain your wounds, but it does not define your destiny. God redeems what you would rather forget. He restores what shame tries to bury, and He uses broken stories to display His glory. There will be moments when memories resurface and guilt tries to take control. You may feel unworthy, hesitant, or afraid to step forward. But God does not call you based on where you have been. He calls you based on who you are becoming in Him. Grace does not erase your history. It transforms it into testimony. Before God uses you, He teaches you to say no to the temptation of self-rejection, because you cannot walk confidently in your calling while constantly punishing yourself for your past. Humility is acknowledging your need for grace, but living in shame is refusing to believe that grace is enough. When you finally release your past into God's hands, something shifts. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop hiding. You stop disqualifying yourself from what God has already forgiven. And in that freedom, God finds a heart He can use. One that understands mercy, walks in gratitude, and knows the power of redemption firsthand. Number 5, the temptation to rely on your own strength. One of the most uncomfortable lessons God teaches before He uses you is how to stop relying on yourself. This temptation often hides behind competence, discipline, and experience. You learn how to manage, solve, and endure on your own. And over time, self-reliance begins to feel like maturity. But spiritual strength is not measured by how much you can carry alone. It is revealed by how deeply you trust God to carry you. God allows seasons where your ability reaches its limit, not to humiliate you, but to expose where dependence has quietly replaced surrender. When your plans fail, your energy fades and your confidence cracks. It feels like weakness, but this is often the moment God is doing His most important work. Because as long as you believe your strength is enough, you will never fully lean on His. Relying on yourself creates control. Depending on God creates faith. Control feels safer because it keeps outcomes predictable. Faith feels risky because it requires release. And yet God cannot fully use someone who needs to be in control. He uses those who are willing to obey even when they cannot see the outcome, calculate the cost, or guarantee success. There will be moments when prayer feels like your last option instead of your first instinct. When exhaustion forces you to kneel instead of push harder. And in those moments, God is not disappointed in you. He is inviting you deeper, not into performance, but into partnership, not into self-effort, but into divine strength. Scripture reminds us that God's power is made perfect in weakness. That does not mean weakness is the goal. It means surrender is. When you stop striving to appear strong, God begins to work through you in ways that are unmistakably His. People will see the fruit and know it did not come from human ability alone. Before God entrusts you with greater responsibility, He must know that you will depend on Him more than yourself, that you will pray before you act, listen before you move, and surrender before you strut. When you learn to say no to self-reliance, you open your life to a strength that never runs dry. God's strength working through a surrendered heart. Number 6, the temptation to stay comfortable. One of the most subtle temptations God teaches you to resist is the desire to remain comfortable. Comfort feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels reasonable. And because it does not look like sin, it often goes unquestioned. But comfort can quietly become a cage that limits obedience and delays growth. God's call rarely leads you to places where everything feels secure. When He prepares you for purpose, He often invites you into spaces that stretch your faith, challenge your identity, and require courage you did not know you had. Comfort whispers, "Stay where you are. Don't risk too much. Don't disrupt what works." But God's voice calls you forward even when the path feels uncertain. Staying comfortable may protect you from fear, but it also protects you from faith. Growth demands movement. Obedience demands trust. And trust cannot mature in places where nothing is required of you. God does not call you to discomfort for the sake of pain. He calls you because what He wants to build in you cannot be formed where everything feels easy. There will be moments when obedience asks you to leave what is familiar, to step away from routines, relationships, or environments that no longer align with where God is leading you. And in those moments, comfort will argue that you have done enough, waited enough, sacrificed enough. But God sees beyond what feels manageable. He sees what is possible when you trust Him fully. Before God uses you, He must know that you will follow Him even when the road is uncomfortable, that you will choose obedience over ease, purpose over predictability, because comfort rarely produces courage, and safety rarely produces surrender. When you finally say no to comfort, you make room for transformation. You discover that God is faithful outside of familiar places, that His presence is not limited to what you already know, and that the life He is calling you into is richer, deeper, and more powerful than anything comfort could ever provide. Number 7, the temptation to give up in the waiting season. One of the final and most painful temptations God teaches you to resist is the urge to give up while you are waiting. Waiting stretches faith in ways action never does. It tests your trust, your patience, and your belief that God is still working when nothing seems to be happening. In the silence, doubt begins to speak, and discouragement tries to take root. The waiting season is where many hearts grow weary. You have prayed sincerely. You have obeyed faithfully. You have endured quietly. And still, there is no visible breakthrough. It is in this space that the temptation whispers that obedience is pointless, that God has forgotten you, or that it would be easier to stop expecting anything at all. But waiting is never wasted in God's hands. What feels like delay is often divine preparation happening beneath the surface. God works deeply before He works visibly. While you are waiting, He is strengthening your endurance, refining your motives, and teaching you to trust His presence rather than His timing. Giving up does not always look like walking away completely. Sometimes it looks like lowering your expectations, praying without faith, obeying without hope, going through the motions, while quietly assuming nothing will change. But God sees the condition of the heart, and He knows when waiting has turned into resignation. Before God uses you, He must know that you will remain faithful, even when you cannot see results. Because calling requires perseverance, purpose demands endurance, and spiritual authority is formed in seasons where faith must stand without evidence. When you choose to keep trusting God in the waiting, something powerful happens. You grow roots that cannot be shaken by delay or disappointment. You learn to rest in God's character, not just His promises. And when the season finally shifts, and it will, you step forward, not exhausted by waiting, but strengthened by it. Because you did not give up, you stayed. And God always honors a heart that waits on Him. Conclusion: before God uses you, He prepares you in the hidden places. Before God ever uses your life in ways others can see, He prepares your heart in ways only you and Him will know. Every temptation you have faced was not meant to destroy you, but to shape you. Every moment you were asked to say no was God teaching you how to say yes to something far greater. He was not withholding purpose, He was protecting it. God's preparation is rarely loud. It does not always feel rewarding. Often it feels like loss, delay, resistance, and silence. But nothing in His process is wasted. Each temptation you resist strengthens your discernment. Each season you endure deepens your faith. Each act of obedience, especially when no one notices, builds a foundation that can carry the weight of what God plans to place on you. You may not see the full picture yet, but God does. He sees where you are going, who you are becoming, and what your life will touch. And that is why He takes His time. He is not just preparing an assignment for you, He is preparing you for the assignment. So do not despise the hidden season. Do not grow bitter in the waiting. Do not believe the lie that your obedience has been overlooked. Heaven records what the world ignores. God honors what others misunderstand. And when the time comes, He will use your life in a way that makes it clear His hand was on you all along. If this message spoke to your heart, take a moment to like this video so it can reach others who are in a waiting season. Subscribe for more faith-building messages that strengthen your walk with God. And if you feel led, share this with someone who needs encouragement right now. Leave a comment with a simple prayer or the word surrender. Let it be your quiet yes to God today.